Welcome to our 12th book of the Old Testament. Originally, Samuel was one book, but today we'll continue with our transition of the leadership of Israel from King Saul to King David. Israel's first king, Saul, began his rule with a victory over the Philistines, but he chose to do his sacrifice his own way instead of God's way through the priest Samuel. This eventually cost him his kingdom. Saul's choices by his own reason instead of obedience to God was his ultimate downfall. While King Saul had no heart for God, we see that David had a whole heart for God. And King Solomon had about a half heart for God, but we'll talk about that at a later time.
2 Samuel chapter 1 begins with David returning from the slaughter of the Amalekites. David finished what Saul did not. David learns of the deaths of King Saul and his sons, the sons while in battle with the Philistines, and King Saul's cowardly death motivated out of fear. Instead of rejoicing that his enemy was defeated, David tore his clothes, mourned, wept, fasted, and wrote a lament about Saul and his sons. How have the mighty fallen?
And in chapter 2, David was anointed king over Judah while he was living in Hebron. Abner, Saul's commander, made Saul's son Ishbosheth king over all of Israel for 2 years, while the house of Judah followed David. Now Joab was David's commander, and he met Abner with the forces of Ishbosheth at the pool of Gibeon. Now Abner proposed a contest between the men of each side and to see who might prevail, and Joab agreed. 12 servants on each side for the kings fought, and the men succeeded in killing each other, and so a battle broke out after all. Israel was beaten by Judah, but Abner fled the battle with Joab's brother Asahel, hot in pursuit. However, as Asahel was closing in, Abner killed him with the butt end of his spear. Then Joab took up the pursuit until the tribe of Benjamin rose up and protected Abner.
In chapter 3, a long war continues between the house of Saul and the house of David. David's house grew stronger while Saul's house weakened. King David asked and received direction from God to move his family to Hebron, including his first 6 sons by several wives. Ishbosheth asked to make a covenant with David. David agreed on the condition that his first wife, Michal, is returned. Abner then came to make peace with David, but Joab was convinced that Abner came to deceive him. Joab then kills Abner to avenge his brother Asahel's death. David again grieves the death of Abner with a lament. The people see his sorrow and his heart of grief for his enemy Abner's death.
In chapter 4, the news of Saul's death is realized by his family, and a nurse of Jonathan's youngest son flees with him for protection. But in the process, Mephibosheth, Jonathan's youngest son, becomes crippled. Now King Ishbosheth of Israel lost all courage when he heard of Abner's death. Then Ishbosheth's own commanders killed him, and they brought his head to King David as good news. Well, more of his enemies were now dead. But as we saw with Saul, King David rewarded their good news by killing them. Not much has changed since the time of the judges when everybody did what was right in their own eyes.
The book of 2 Samuel covers 3 sections of David's life. Chapters 1 through 10, when he becomes king of first Judah and then Israel. Chapters 11 and 12, when he sins as king. And chapters 13 through 24, with the consequences of his sin. There are a lot of moving pieces in today's reading. Intrigue, deceit, alliances, grief. Seems like little has changed in our day. I was encouraged in the midst of these challenges. David asked the Lord for direction, and God gave it to him. May we have an ongoing conversation with God each day, asking, thanking, praising, understanding that we live in wholeness as believers. Our world is his world. We short ourselves when we don't include him in all of our world. But now the stage is set for what follows in 2 Samuel. What are your takeaways from God's word today?
We look forward to hearing from you, so please leave us a comment below. And don't forget to join us here again on Set Sail tomorrow as we continue our Bible study together.